Hey, I think we're on. I think we're working. Can you guys hear me and see me? Nothing like hotel Wi-Fi. Good morning, guys. Now let me know if you can hear and see me. I was live, but I wasn't getting my screen to turn on. So hopefully we are okay. Donna says can't hear or see you yet. Hopefully that has changed. My sweet wife is texting me, so hopefully it has been fixed. She's saying, it looks like you're live, but we can't see you. Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Donna. Good morning, Rich. Great to see you guys. Yay, can hear and see, Rachel says. Whew. Again, nothing like hotel Wi-Fi. As soon as I went live, it needed me to sort of log back into the Wi-Fi with my room number and all that. So anyway, nothing like, I was on, I was working. Sorry about that, gang. Listen, we have some neat things to chat about this morning. I'm really excited to hang out with you. We're going to talk about what I call the beginning of the end of the secular mind, or you could say the secular life. Bridget Anderson, it is good to see you logging on. I've seen on social media that you were in the hospital and had some low blood pressure issues. We've been praying for you. I hope that you are better. I look forward to going and looking for updates, but I'm excited to see you on at the very least, whether that's from the hospital or maybe you have were released yesterday. I'm a little out of touch, but I'm just blessed to see you on. That's wonderful. Hope you are doing well. We're praying for you. Listen, so we are talking about this topic. I think it's episode 79, but I don't know. I may have lost count somewhere. It could be 80, 81. I don't know. I need to go back and check my numbers. We'll get it on track as soon as I get back home. But episode 79, the beginning of the end of the secular mind, of secular thinking, or you could say the secular life. The reason I really wanted to say of the secular life is because you don't have a secular life. There really is no such thing as secular life. That's just code for death, right? I can't produce life. My circumstances can't produce life. Other people can't produce life for me. There's only one life. His name is Jesus Christ, and everything else isn't an alternate life. Everything else is the lack of life. And what do you call the lack of life? You call it death. So the secular life is really not life at all, and the lack of life is death. So I had it titled, in fact, somewhere it may even say, the end of the secular life, but living according to the secular way of thinking. So it really is the end of the secular mind that causes experiential, soulical death. That is the lack of life to us. So if you're just joining us, good morning. We are live broadcasting as we do every day on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeQDaniel, and at facebook.com/Mike Q Daniel. So go to Mike Q Daniel wherever you are, and you are likely to find us every morning at 6:45 a.m. Central Time, Texas time. We do a live broadcast. And so we are talking today about this problem of our life and circumstances where we often, the church, the body of Christ, the saints, even maybe especially grace walking believers, people who know our hope in the finished work and the grace of God, can very easily get caught up in a secular way of thinking and be very frustrated in our life and circumstances. Looking for my notes here. Oh, I have a search field open and that doesn't like that. Here we go. I was searching for something for the group I was working with last night, and those notes are, that search field has me way, way, way in the wrong place. Here we go. So here's the deal. The world as we know it, the problem that we are experiencing is not the real problem. You see problems in your day today, and the problems and obstacles of my day. Yesterday, if you joined us, you saw that I was in pretty bad shape. I was just really tired from 12 hours of teaching and meeting and interceding and working with really sharp people on really hard problems, and just kind of 12 hours straight. It was late and I was tired and I didn't sleep well and I was hurting, and so I got up the next morning, which was yesterday morning, and got with you guys. And it's easy to go, okay, my throat is tired and I'm lacking in sleep and my head and back are hurting, and here's my list of problems. So God, here's the stuff I need fixed. That's so normal. Here's the stuff. Here's what's broken. It's so easy to do that. But the problem is not the problem. The problem is not really the problem. Let's look at a chapter and verse. I love this passage. This is Jeremiah 17, 7 and 8. And I'm actually going to start a couple of verses earlier than that. Oh, I hit my camera. Golly, doing this from a hotel room is an adventure, gotta tell you. So this is Jeremiah, and Jeremiah was the prophet where God is talking about the captivity that Israel is going into, because he wants them to come back to a theocentric, to a God-centric way of thinking and living. So in some ways, the entire book of Jeremiah, while we're not in the condition that Israel was in, right? We're on the other side of the cross. We're indwelt by the life of Christ. We're under grace, not under law. And yet we as a culture and as a society, and even us in the church, need to come back to a non-secular way of operating in the world. Okay, we're going to turn off the Wi-Fi. Sorry about that. Hope y'all are still with me. We just have to remember as we go through all of the prophets that he is speaking to the human condition and our need for God, but our need for God in Christ on the other side of the cross is met in him. We're not longing for something that we're lacking, but the process, the soulical process of our thinking and feeling and acting is the same as it is throughout. Okay, I am switching to another device. Let me know again if you can hear and see me. Oh, someone's saying it's better now. I'm going to turn off the camera that I was using, and so sorry, folks. We're adjusting on the fly as we go. Hotel life. Woohoo! This may not work very well. I've got a big device on a very tight setup. All right, can y'all hear and see me okay? I'm not sure how this is going to work. I'm going to have to be operating on my screen a little bit here. So sorry about that. Let me get on here and see if I can see some comments. Can y'all hear me? Okay, got me. No worries. Can hear and see you again. All right. So sorry, guys. Thank you for being patient. This is worth it. Stay with me. Stay with me. Stay with me. Here we go. Back into our topic. So here's what it says, Jeremiah 17. I'm going to start in verse 5, and then we'll pick up in verse 7. I'll put on the screen. But verse 5, the context says this. Thus says the Lord, God speaking through Jeremiah, cursed is the man who trusts in man and makes flesh his strength, whose heart turns away from the Lord. He is like a shrub in the desert. Don't be a shrub. Friends, don't be a shrub. Don't be man-centric. Don't be anthrocentric, anthropomorphocentric. Don't be man-centric. I don't know what that word is. He's like a shrub in the desert. When you're man-centered, starting with man's issues, man's problems, man's resources, he's like a shrub in the desert and shall not see any good come. The result of that is never going to be good. It might seem like it's good, might seem like it's working out, but it never gets you where you need to be. Never overcomes the problems that the flesh was never designed to fix. She'll never see any good come, and shall dwell in the parched places, needy of the wilderness, in an uninhibited salt land. That sounds pretty uninhabitable, doesn't it? Pretty untenable. The life of the flesh, living carnally, doesn't mean living in horribly overt, nasty looking sin patterns. The carnal life is living from self as the source. It's living from what the flesh can produce and accomplish on its own. So here's verse 7. It says, "But blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him." Do you see the contrast? There's this guy who's starving in the desert, this shrub in a parched land that can never get enough, never do enough, never overcome enough, never make it work. Can you relate to that? Do you feel like that's the world in which we now live? That the problems are greater than the resources to overcome them? That's the shrub life. That's the flesh life, the carnal life. And so he's contrasting that. It says, instead of the person who puts their hope in man, who lives in a desperately needy dryness, blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. They, you and I, in Christ, with our hope in Christ, not just indwelt by Christ, it's about where your hope is. They'll be like a tree planted by the water that sends its roots out by the stream. And he describes that too. What's it like to live from God with your roots out by the stream instead of as a shrub from the flesh, from the carnality of man to overcome man's issues? He says, wow, comedy of errors this morning. It does the tree that sends its roots out by the stream, right? The man with his hope in God does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. Do you see the obstacle? The heat doesn't cause it to lack. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in the year of drought. The circumstances can't deprive it of its life because the circumstances are not the source of its life. And it never fails to bear fruit. What it produces in life is not a byproduct of the circumstances that change every single day with the seasons, with the weather, with the circumstances. Instead, the man who trusts in God, instead of putting hope in the flesh, the carnal life, man whose hope is spiritual and eternal and internal in the person of God, instead of external and material and temporal in the circumstances and self. That person has their roots going out to the stream, to God himself. So as the circumstances are untenable and inhabitable, instead of being the shrub trying to survive in the desert, they're the tree that is living from the river of God. There's a huge contrast here between the spiritual reality of our life in God and the circumstantial reality of trying to live carnally from self and circumstance. Do you see the difference? And I want to point out what the difference is. The difference is not the weather. The difference between these two, let's call them guys, these two people, these two groups of people living carnally or spiritually, the difference between the river living tree and the desert starving shrub, the difference is not the weather. The heat comes for them both. The desert, the wilderness is there for them both. The calamity, the frost, the wind is there for them both. The obstacle is not the difference. If you are living to be the fix to your obstacles, then you are missing the point of the life of God. The problem, friends, the problem isn't your problem. The problems that you and I want God to overcome is not the problem, because they're not a problem for him and he's not withholding. You may have heard that your entire Christian life. Could have been decades that you've been hearing that, the problems aren't a problem for God. He's an overcomer. Then why am I still being overcome by the problems all the time? It's because I think that my problem is to fix the problem in the circumstances, but the tree that's living from the river and the shrub that's starving in the desert are in the exact same circumstances. The problem, the circumstance, the lack, the limited fleshly resources. The problem is not your problem. The resolution isn't the resolution to the circumstances. Better weather, better circumstances, fewer predators, easier living, shallower root systems so that it's easier. None of that is going to fix your problem, right? The resolution to the circumstance is not the solution to our life. You do not need your problems fixed for you to live an abundant life. You do not need your problems fixed for you to live an abundant life. Isn't that amazing? That's challenging me. So the problem is that we're starting living our process, our thinking is that we're starting from the wrong place. We're starting with the problem and wanting us to fix it. And when that doesn't work, we want something in the circumstances or someone else to fix it. And when that doesn't work, most people come around to God and they want God to fix it. God, here's the problem. I can't fix it. They can't fix it. The circumstances isn't getting any better. God, you fix the problem, because if the problem is okay, I'm okay. And I'm here to tell you, the problem being better doesn't make you better. And the problem being worse doesn't make you worse. You are not living from the circumstances. Even the best of circumstances cannot produce life for you. You are rooted in the river of God, the spring of life that is Christ himself. The problem is not the problem. The source is the problem. So here's the solution. Here's unsecular thinking. Here's spiritual thinking. We need to begin with God, not begin with the problem. Instead of looking at the problem and wanting to fix it, instead of looking at the problem and wanting the circumstances to change, instead of looking at the problem and saying, God, fix my problem. That's not wrong. That's not bad. That's not evil. He wants to know your heart. I'm not saying don't tell him what you need or tell him what you desire, or tell him what's on your heart. He's totally into where you are. Where you are is where he wants to work with you. Be authentic, share your needs, share your desires, share what you want to happen. But I'm here to tell you, fixing the problem isn't the fix of your problem. The problem, the solution to your circumstance isn't the resolution to the secular life, because the weather will change again and the circumstances will change again and the predators will change again. And we're not trying to get a better secular life. We're not trying to get a better secular life. We're trying to live from the spring of living water, from which the circumstances have little effect, little impact, for which the circumstances have little effect. So to be spiritually centric is the opposite of being problem centric, circumstantially centric. We look at the problem, we want God to fix it, to remove it, to change it, to transform it. We want the miracle, the miraculous life, but we don't want any of the problems that require the miracles, right? We want the manna. God, I'm hungry, send the manna. And he said, it doesn't work if you want to be the solution. If you want to not need the manna, then what I have for you is worthless. If you don't want to need me, you want to make your life okay without God, then I'm not your source. But if you want to walk through whatever your circumstances may bring and be okay, then I'm your source. See, we're starting in the wrong place, and more often than not, we just stay frustrated. The weather changes, the circumstances changes, the people around us change, the problems change, our personal resources to deal with the problem changes, but we don't get any more satisfaction from our circumstances, whether they change for the good or the bad, because we're living from the wrong source, and our personal resources and the circumstantial resources are never enough to overcome the circumstantial crises. It was never meant to be my circumstantial life is bigger and better than my circumstantial problem. My personal fleshly resources are bigger than what is demanded by the fallenness of the world around me. You can never produce your own peace. The circumstances are never going to be the source of peace. So no matter how easy life gets, it's never going to be peaceful if you're living from the circumstances. That's just not the design for life. But Christ can be your peace, and if it's going to be Christ who is your peace, and you already have him by grace, then it's not going to be you have enough peace when the circumstances are easy and you don't have enough peace when the circumstances are hard. Your roots are going out to Christ who is your peace. So when the circumstances aren't peaceful, that's okay. They're not your source. Do you see the difference? We're not beginning with the problem and needing to fix them. We're living from God who's bigger than the problem. We're starting from that wrong place, and we're going to feel stuck and bewildered and try harder and strive more, and we're trying to rest in God. We're trying to rest in God. We're trying to rest in God. Well, there's no more of God. It's just you're not living from him. You're trying to get him to bring rest from your circumstances. We're pleading more. We become disillusioned about the Christian life. Either this doesn't work for me, or maybe it's not real at all. So my friend, I'm here to tell you the end of secular thinking, the end of the secular mind, the attempt at secular life, the shrub life in the desert. The solution is to start with God. Don't be about the problem. Don't be about being good enough, big enough, doing the right things, doing enough in order to get the problem fixed, either by your ability or to earn it from God. If I'm good enough, then God would fix the problem, and then I would be fine because the problems are gone. What if you could be fine without the problems being gone? What if you could be fine without the problems being gone? What if you're already fine? What if you're already okay? What if you're already supplied? What if you're already plugged in? I am not telling you to send your roots out to the stream. Let me tell you, I am not telling you be the tree with your roots out by the stream. I'm telling you, you are the tree with your roots out to the stream. Stop stressing the circumstances when you're living from the river of God. Start with him. Start with him. Start with the river. Start with the stream. Start with the living water. From a rootedness of God comes an overflow of his life, his enoughness. You're plugged in, drink. You're plugged in, drink. The drought doesn't go away for you to be okay. The drought doesn't go away. In seasons of ease, your life is still Christ, and in seasons of hardship, his life is still enough. The drought doesn't go away when you start living the spiritually empowered life. The wind, the rain, the storm may not settle. The cold air and sleet and hail of your circumstances may not warm up and make life easy. The drought may not abate in your circumstances. I hate to tell you that. There are people in worse circumstances than me every single day who are operating greater joy than me every single day. And the reason is they're not living from their circumstances as much as me. And probably the reason is because their circumstances are so further from their needs that they didn't put their hope in their circumstances to start with. All they had hope for was in God. And they have more joy than I do. I have been to places in the world where there's absolutely no circumstantial hope. People are dying left and right. They're sick and they're hurting and they're under persecution and they're in hiding. And I'm in hiding with them as we're preaching and ministering to people. And their joy of the Lord makes me look like a spiritual dwarf. It's amazing. And it's because they had no hope in their circumstances to begin with. Their hope was always and only in the indwelling spring of living water. And it is overflowing from them. That's the life, people. That's the life. The drought may not abate. The heat may not ease. The storms may not settle. But your okayness is not in the weather around you. It's not in the obstacles going away. It's not in your circumstances getting better. Your life is in the river that your roots are already plugged into. Live from the stream of living water within you. His enoughness. Here's the irony. We think that the problem is central. It's ours to fix. or the flesh. If I could be better, then the problem wouldn't be as big a problem. I need to be bigger than the issue. I need to be better than the issue. I need, if the problem isn't the debt, then the problem is I need more money to overcome the debt. If the problem isn't that people hate me, then the problem is I'm not lovable enough for them to love me, right? Either the circumstance needs to be better or I need to be better so that the circumstance is less an issue. But neither the circumstance, nor it's like saying that the tree needs to be bigger so that the wind doesn't shake it so much. Look, it is not, I need to be healthier so that the drought doesn't affect me as much. Look, neither the circumstances nor the self is going to be the solution to the problem. The problem is not the problem. The source that you're living from is the problem. So the irony is we think of these things as internal, right? I need to be better. I need to get something else that I'm lacking from the outside inside, right? I need to go to the well of the world and drink more of what the world has to offer so that I'm not lacking what the world is costing me. And the reality is all of that is external to me, and the solution is internal to me. I'm looking out there to fix something in here, and the reality is I have everything in here that overcomes and overwhelms the circumstances out there. I need to start living from the inside out instead of from the outside in. And the incredible irony is I think that I am trying to do that. I think that I am trying to overcome the circumstances. I think that I am trying to trust God enough for me to be good enough to overcome what's bad in my life and circumstances. I think that it's the problems are internal and the solutions are external, when in reality the problems are external and the solutions are internal. The river of God that Jeremiah is talking about is actually the spring of living water that's bubbling up and overflowing from inside you already. I keep looking for something to drink while I'm overflowing with living water that I'm not choosing to be satisfied and trust and live from. Remember, what Jeremiah is saying is that the one who puts his hope in God is like the tree with his roots out to the stream. It is not being planted there. It's sending your roots there. And sending your roots there is choosing to place your hope in God, not in the circumstances, not in the self, not even the new self. The new self is just being planted there. And so you are a new self with the living water in you. The question is, are you trying to live from something besides the river that you've been planted near, in, with? You're in. But you can choose to be trying to draw life from something that you're not in, that isn't you, that isn't your design. We're abiding in Christ. You can't get more abiding than already grafted in the vine and him living through you. His life is flowing through you. The question is, are you looking for life from somewhere else? You don't abide more by getting more plugged into Jesus. Instead, abiding in him is living from where you've been grafted in already. So we have the solution. Christ is the solution. It is not the circumstance. We need to begin with God and then live through the circumstances, not begin with the circumstances and try to get God to fix them. The river of God is within you. The problem, saint, is the external world, the flesh, the enemy. The problem is external and the solution is internal. I'm not living for something that I'm lacking. I'm living from the overflow of the fullness I already have by grace, from the overflow of the spring of living water that is Christ himself in you already. The issues of life do not go away, not often, not for long. They might change. One problem goes away and three more replace it. Have you noticed? That's the secular life. It's broken. The world is broken. The system is broken. The secular resources are always overwhelmed by the circumstantial dilemmas, but they are not obstacles or hindrances to his abundant life. If we're honest, we're living for God to try to get abundant circumstances instead of living from God and enjoying his abundant life. So here's my encouragement. Stop starting with the problem. And don't be condemned by this. I've done this my entire life. I was doing this yesterday on the video with you guys. This is a daily choosing to live from him, not because you're lacking him, but because you've got him. That's faith. It's faith in who he is already in you instead of faith in who you're going to be for him or in the circumstances that he's going to fix and overcome, that he's going to give you a life besides himself. That's the error. So stop starting with the problem and start ending what I call the worldly fix fest, right? Let's stop ending the worldly fix fest. If I think that politics need to go my way in order for me to be okay, I have missed the point of his life. That doesn't mean it could be better. Doesn't mean that it's not getting missed. Doesn't mean that traffic couldn't be better. That's great. Go and vote for whatever the funding issue is that's going to make your life. I'm not saying to abdicate everything to everybody else. I'm saying you get to engage in the circumstances of your life. No, don't go and live a monastic life. That's not going to improve your relationship or condition with God. Instead, how about you live from the inner solace of Christ in you, who is your source, the spring of living water, and let the enoughness of his divineness be what it looks like for you to participate in your circumstances from his life, instead of trying to apply his life to improve your circumstances, because there's no life in them. There's no life in them. Let's start with Abba and let his life, through the grace and finished work of Christ, flow and overflow as our source. Here's a question of the day for you guys. Are you willing? See, it's what Jesus said all the time. It was never a problem for him to heal, to move, to change things, but you got a great excuse for not enjoying life, but you also have a great life that's available to be expressed through you, without the problems always being solved. Do you want to be healed? What is it that you want from me? Who is it that's hurt? Why did you touch my cloak? He's over and over and over getting people to say the problem so that he can be the solution through a relationship with him. I'm the source. You're putting your faith in me. I can bring about life in this circumstance. But if you're just wanting life from the circumstance, I'm probably not your guy, rich young ruler. You probably can live from me, and then we'll figure out how to do what it is that you need to do in your life, if you even need to do it. Then we'll talk about living through those circumstances from me as your source, instead of me overcoming the circumstances so you can live from them instead. It's not what he's about. So he's always asking, do you want to be healed? Do you want this to be better? Do you want to live from me? Do you want the life that I have, or do you want your circumstances you don't have? What do you want to live from today? Choose. And if you put your hope in me, here's the question. Are you willing to stop starting with the problem? Stop starting with the problem. That's the secular thinking. And start ending the worldly fix fest. Will you let the issues of your day drive you to your roots deep in the enoughness? Not to drive your roots deep. You're already in. You're already grafted. He's already your life. But drive you to live from the roots you have deep in the enoughness of the indwelling Christ. That's the takeaway. Will you live from him as your overflowing life already by grace? Or are you trying to live for him in such a way that he's going to bring about life from your circumstances? Because that's a frustrated Christian. That's more frustrating than living as an unbeliever, because you're living from the same resources that they're lacking, for the same life that they're wanting, with the source of abundant life already living and overflowing within you. That's a much more frustrated life, to live for the circumstances, to live for the world, to live from the self, when you have the indwelling life of Christ that created the universe, the dynamic, creative, overflowing reality of the power of divine life that you could participate in, instead of living from what's around you. I'm not saying that this is easy. I'm not saying that this is natural. But as we run into the problems of life, and you start honestly and authentically, and it's totally okay to do this, going to God, going, God, fix this. What are you going to do about this? How does this work? I don't want to deal with this. I want this to be better. I want to be better. I want them to be better. I want this problem to go away. I want the solutions to be easier. I want the resources to be more. Look, that's not sinful. I'm just telling you, the problems will always come. The circumstances will always come. The weather will always come. The predators will always come. There will always be obstacles to circumstantial living, because we're not living circumstantially. We're living abundantly in the finished work of Christ. So let those problems drive you to your rootedness in him. You're already in him. And from that overflow, You can walk through the circumstances. He can change the circumstances. He can heal what's hurting, but you can also persevere and overcome and experience joy and have his peace and walk an abundant life regardless of the weather, because you're living from the water that is within you, that is Christ himself. I hope that's an encouragement to you. We've gone a little long today, in part because of my camera problems. So thanks for hanging with me. Listen, secular thinking is living for the solutions to worldly problems. Spiritual thinking is living from the abundant life of Christ in you already. The fullness, the enoughness, the sufficiency that is his life, so that you can have peace in the midst of chaos and love in the midst of hate and enoughness in the midst of modest resources. You can have all he is all the time in all your circumstances for whatever you are going through in this very temporary, very secular, very limited blink of an eye life that people mistake for what we're living from. It's not you. It's not who you are. It's not what you're designed for. And it's much less than all you have in the fullness of Christ in you, the one and only hope of the glory of God. So make today a day where you really do know him more as the overflow of your life, regardless of your circumstances. Know him more. Grow in grace as you depend upon him. And go love each other like crazy, like only he can, in and through you. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Love you guys.